Good morning, Stewart's Chapel. Brother Don Pierson here and Don Counts, and we're here in the basement of Stewart's Chapel Church where there's been some cleaning, some well-needed cleaning. I'm over in chapter 5 of Amos, verse 18. We are beginning a section known as the Woe, W-O-E. It will continue along after we stop reading. If you may remember, there's a section in Matthew that Jesus gives of the woes, warnings, strong warnings. Amos 5:18. Woe to you who desire the day of the Lord! For what good is the day of the Lord to you? It will be darkness and not light. It will be as though a man fled from a lion and met a bear, or as though he went into the house and leaned his hand on the wall and a serpent bit him. Is not the day of the Lord darkness and not light? Is it not very dark, with no brightness in it? And this is why God says, I despise your holy and religious feasts. I do not savor or desire your sacred assemblies. Though you offer me burnt offerings and your grain offerings, I will not accept them, nor will I regard or even look toward your fattened peace offerings. Take away from me the noise of your singing, for I will not hear the melody of your string instruments. Let justice run down like water, and righteousness like a mighty stream. Did you offer me sacrifices and offerings in the wilderness for 40 years, O house of Israel? And the answer is no. You have also carried Sikuth, your king, and Sheun, your idols, the star of your gods, which you made for yourselves. Therefore, I will send you into captivity way beyond Damascus, says the Lord, whose name is the God of hosts. Strong language. God, it tells them a phrase that is used a lot among Christians today, the day of the Lord, a day of His coming for the church. But yet, we also saw this in the book of Joel, and we see it here in Amos. God lets them know that the day of the Lord is not a bright day for everyone. It is a day of deep darkness and judgment for some. For those who seek Him, and those who seek Him while they still can, it does become a day of light. But for others, it is the darkest night. It's interesting the things that God says that He hates. Yes, God uses the word I hate, and it's not the only time. Actually, in the Bible, God says He hates many, many things. But He hates their religious services, their gatherings, even their most sacred. Isn't it interesting that God uses the word your sacred, your holy gatherings? God says, I hate them. In other words, they're not holy to me. They're not sacred to me. I don't want your offerings. I'm not even going to accept them. It doesn't matter how many you bring. I'm not even going to look in your direction. It's interesting. He also despises their singing. You know, we live in a nation of worship. Worship buildings are everywhere. Music is everywhere. We are a nation of hypocrisy. We think that as long as we come and raise our hands and sing good and everybody is moved and give our offerings and our tithes and come often, then that God must choose us. Amos leaves a very strong warning to the church of today. God has never been impressed by our worship service. He's never been impressed by our offerings. He's definitely never been impressed by our singing. He's not been impressed by just preaching. God desires far more from us than just gathering in our sacred gatherings. You see, God desires for us to be sacred, set aside, belonging to Him. Israel had much worship, but they didn't have much of Him. You know why? Because God didn't have much of them. Over and over again through Amos, that's the problem. There are no substitutes for a real, live, intimate relationship with God. There is no worship, no church, no religious stuff that can substitute for being faithful to Him. Let me ask you a question. Are you more faithful to worship, to church, to your calling, to your ministry, than you are to Him? I ask that as one who is constantly battling that battle. It's a lot easier to be faithful to the stuff, even to a people, than it is to Him. I love you, Stewart's Chapel, but you listen to the woe. Listen to the woe of God.